No other announcements, if you will. If you have your Bibles this evening, we continue in the book of Acts, and we are at chapter 5 this evening, about Ananias and Sapphira. Chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. But a certain man named Ananias with Sapphira, his wife, sold a possession, and kept back part of the price, his wife also being privy to it, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled thine heart to lie to the Holy Ghost, and to keep back part of the price of the land? While it remained, was it not thine own? And after it was sold, was it not in thine own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thine heart? Thou hast not lied unto men, but unto God. And Ananias, hearing these words, fell down and gave up the ghost, and great fear came upon them that heard these things. And the young men arose, wound him up, and carried him out, and buried him. And it was about the space of 3 hours after, when his wife, not knowing what was done, came in. And Peter answered unto her, Tell me whether ye sold the land for so much. And she said, Yea, for so much. Then Peter said unto her, How is it that ye have agreed together to tempt the Spirit of the Lord? Behold, the feet of them which have buried thy husband are at the door, and shall carry thee out. Then fell she down straightway at his feet, and yielded up the ghost. And the young men came in, and found her dead, and carrying her forth, buried her by her husband. And great fear came upon all the church, and upon as many as heard these things. Tonight we want to consider, you can't fool God. You can't fool God. We have been observing in our series of Acts so far. Mostly we've been in chapter 2 about the day of Pentecost and the grand and glorious signs and wonders and the birth and the growth of the early church. But now we come to a practical matter. We come to the realization that that the church is not perfect, that her members do sin, and yea, even do lie. First of all, we have a necessary warning. Now, Ananias and Sapphira's offer of property was, of course, voluntary. There in verse 4, while it remained, was it not thine own? After it was sold, was it not in thine own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thine heart? Thou hast not lied unto men, but unto God. Now, no one forced Ananias and Sapphira to sell the property and give anything to the church. This decision was entirely up to them. That was where they sinned. They didn't have to give it all. They could have given part. Where they sinned and where they erred was that they said they were giving it all, but were only giving part of it. Now there is a parallel to this. You go back to Joshua 7:22 through 25. This is with the parallel with Achan. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran into the tent. And behold, it was hid in his tent, and the silver under it. And they took them out of the midst of the tent, and brought them unto Joshua, and to all the children of Israel, and laid them out before the Lord. And Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his oxen, and his asses, and his sheep, and his tent, and all that they had, and they brought them into the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, Why hast thou troubled us? The Lord shall trouble thee this day. And then all Israel stoned him with stones, and burned them with fire, after they had stoned him with stones. Sin in the camp here. Israel was not winning here the battle of Ai. And the sin in the camp was Achan had taken the spoils of the victory of Jericho. And he had hid them. And this is exactly doing what he was not supposed to do. And this is why Israel was not doing any good according winning this victory here at Ai. And of course, whereas we read in this scripture, Joshua found it out, and Achan and his family wound up being stoned. Now Acts parallels the Old Testament book of Joshua. Both books temper their enthusiastic voices with an account of failure. Now, Achan also sinned for by taking for personal use that which had been devoted to God. Both were judged immediately and favorably. Now, secondly, dishonesty is serious stuff. Does God judge people like this today? Now, obviously God doesn't judge like this all the time. If he did, I dare say there wouldn't be any of us in church tonight. Because all of us have lied at some point. All of us have been dishonest at some point. So, we would all be dead. Why did God choose, why did he allow for the deaths of these that was sinned against? Isn't God a forgiving God? Well, I think in both instances he wanted to teach a lesson. He wanted to teach a lesson there to Israel at Ai, and he wants to teach a lesson, wanted to teach a lesson for the early church. Now, many will criticize the 5th chapter of Acts for being harsh. Judgment is not a popular theme with modern people. Many modern people think God is a God of love, and he doesn't judge. He is a God of love. His very essence is love. But he's also a God of judgment. You will find that all through the Old Testament. You will find that he told David and others to kill the enemies. And I don't mean just the men, I mean the women and children. And so judgment is not a popular theme with modern people. The prevailing theme, or a big theme today, is I truly believe that God loves and cares rather than judges or condemns. He does love and care. But he also judges. This is his other side. He does have a wrathful side. God does judge, though fortunately usually not immediately. I'd say if he did, we'd all be dead. We would all be dead tonight. In fact, the whole church was filled with fear as we read there in verses 5 and 11. And great fear came upon all them that heard these things. Again in verse 11. Great fear came upon all the church and upon as many as heard these things. So the whole church there was filled with fear. This incident is a reminder that no church is perfect. Many have secret sins among the membership. And the fact that fear ran through the church indicated others felt guilty too. They probably thought, whoa, boy, I've lied about a few things. I've cheated some others in dealings or whatever. And they probably said, boy, I better straighten up. That could be me. Sometimes, God will work that way. I've seen people over the years. And I do believe that, and the Bible does teach, that God will only allow a Christian to go so far in sin. And that he will take the body for the salvation of the soul. I do think that happens. Now again, we got to be careful there in saying that about other people. I think that's dangerous because that may not be God's will. In other words, if somebody dies or has an accident, we a lot of times we say, well, that's God getting them back for what they done. We don't know that. Now, I've said it myself a few times. We don't know that. So we got to be careful what we say, because it may not be. It may not be. But anyway, we need enough fear to consider the consequences of our actions. And God does judge. But he judges not out of cruelty, punitively, but out of love. In other words, he's not some benevolent dictator or whatever sitting up there saying, well, look what Greg did. I'm going to send a lightning bolt and I'm going to get it. That's not what he's doing. He could do that, but he judges us to wake us up. Perhaps, a recent misfortune does have some meaning. Maybe God is trying to teach us something. But I'll have to say, I had a professor, Dr. Leon Mars Hill, that said you've got to be careful about saying that about others. But, we could say it about ourselves, I believe. And even then we might be wrong. We don't know why all things happen or certain things happen. But he begins judgment with the church. 1 Peter 4:17, for the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end of them that obey not the gospel of God? Dishonesty causes serious problems among Christians. We may try to cut a few quarters and say, well, nobody's going to know about this, or I'm going to come out ahead. You may not get the judgment of God in this life, but somewhere down the line you will answer for it. We need to present ourselves as we really are. Ananias and Sapphira lied because they wanted to impress the rest of the church. Have you ever tried to impress somebody and it blow completely up in your face? Well, I have. And that's usually not a good idea. Successful author Sidney Sheldon tells a remarkable story, a memorable story about an embarrassing event that occurred to him. He had bought a lovely blue Rolls Royce, and he owned other cars, but that one was his pride and joy. And a few days later, he parked near his shop in Beverly Hills. Well, he went inside and did his shopping, returned to the parking lot, got behind the driver's seat of the Rolls. And an arm reached through the driver's side window and grabbed his shoulder. And the boy said, "What do you think you're doing?" He looked out the window and there stood an enormous Texan with a big old 10-gallon hat. "This is my car, boy," said the Texan. "No, it isn't," Sheldon told him. "It's mine." And to prove it, he stuck the key in the ignition. Guess what? It didn't fit. Have you ever done that before? He realized what had happened. So he said to the Texan, "I'm terribly sorry, but I'm driving the same model and color Rolls Royce as you, and I obviously parked right in the back of you. And as the huge stranger stood there watching him, Sheldon got out of the car and walked him back to his wife's white Volkswagen that he was driving that morning. Amazing how he made that kind of mistake, but anyway. Have you ever done something like that? Have you ever tried to impress people and it just makes you look fake? Always be yourself. That's what I've always been told, and that's what I believe. You know, many look to you and I as examples of faith. And our lesson here is that people, even Christians, will always fail. I'll fail you. You'll fail me. As hard as we try, we'll fail each other. But one person that will not fail us is Jesus Christ. He will stick closer than a brother, and he will not fail us. Only Jesus deserves full trust. Now, people can't see Jesus. Jesus is in heaven, unless he appears. But they can see us. And they can see, or maybe they can't see, I don't know, Jesus is. They only see us. We should be as consistent as we can. Now, we're going to fail and we're going to fall. But we should watch our lives for their sake as best that we can. Dishonesty ruins our witness with outsiders. Robert Tansey writes about a Christian friend of his in the Midwest who was general manager of a chain of newspapers. And one of his responsibilities was the setting of advertising policies. And at one point, he ordered that advertising clients who used a Christian symbol or Bible verse on business cards or stationery would be required to pay cash in advance. You know what? They were his worst paying accounts. Our most effective witness to non-Christians and to fellow Christians, fellow believers, is not through what we say, but what we do. If you ever heard your mom and daddy say, don't do as I do, do as I say do. Thirdly, the need for integrity. What face do we present to the world? You know, God hates hypocrisy and lukewarmness. Revelation 3:16 to the church of Laodicea. He writes, I would that you were hot or cold, I'll spew you out of my mouth. Lukewarm. You ever drunk lukewarm water? It's awful, ain't it? I don't like lukewarm water. And that's what God said he would do to the church of Laodicea. He'd spew them out of his mouth. Are our actions and thoughts consistent? Now, we're all inconsistent to some point. Every one of us. There ain't one of us tonight that's perfect. No Christian should be complacent about their walk with God. We must be as honest as best we can throughout, not just sometimes. Chuck Swindoll, in his book, Growing Deep in the Christian Life, writes about a man who bought fried chicken dinners for himself and his date one late afternoon. Well, the attendant of the fast food outlet, however, accidentally gave him the proceeds from the day's business. A bag of money, much of it cash instead of fried chicken. I don't know what would hurt a Baptist preacher's feelings anymore. Not getting his chicken or getting the money. But anyway. Well, after driving to the picnic site, the two of them sat down to enjoy some chicken. And they discovered that they had in that bag an awful lot more than chicken. It was about $800. Well, Bill, but He was an unusual guy. He put back the money back into the car and drove all the way back. Well, Mr. Clean got out, walked in, and became an instant hero. By then, the manager was frantic. The guy with the bag of money looked at the manager in the eye and says, "I want you to know that I came by to get a couple of chicken dinners and wound up with all this money here." The manager was thrilled to death. He said, "Let me call the newspaper. I'm going to have your picture put in the local paper. You're one of the most honest men that I've ever heard of." And the man quickly jumped in. No, don't do that. Then he leaned in a little closer and whispered, "You see, that woman I'm with is not my wife. She's somebody else's wife." So it's harder to find than lost cash is a perfect heart. We must be honest in motivations as well as action. What is our motivation? What are we trying to accomplish with others? Then fourthly, how to gain integrity. Charles Swindoll also says, be committed to honesty within yourself. Be committed to the truth regardless of how much it hurts. In his recent book, Integrity, Ted Angstrom told a story. For Coach Cleveland Stroud and the Bulldogs of Rockdale County High School in Conyers, Georgia, they won the 1991 championship season. They accumulated 21 wins and 5 losses on their way to the Georgia boys basketball tournament. They had a dramatic come-from-behind victory in the state finals. But now the new glass trophy case outside the high school gymnasium is bare. Earlier in the month, the Georgia High School Association deprived Rockdale County of the championship after school officials admitted a mistake. A player who was ineligible due to his low grades had played 45 seconds in the first of the school's 5 postseason games. We didn't know he was ineligible at the time. We didn't know it until a few weeks ago, Mr. Stroud said. Some people have said that we should have just kept silent about it, that it was just 45 seconds and the player was an impact player. But it went on to say, you've got to do what's honest and right and what the rules say. And I told my team that people forget the rules of basketball games. They don't ever forget what you're doing. We should hate all that is phony or false. We should be ourselves. We should be committed to honesty with God. We should sit down and make an in-depth assessment of our spiritual strengths and weaknesses. We shouldn't take God's forgiveness lightly. Don't just do, get his forgiveness and then keep, doing wrong. Don't admit how weak you are and then do nothing about getting stronger. Work on those areas where you're the weakest. In 1987, there was a crime wave in Ghana. The criminals were mostly Christians. Journalist Roy Beck commented, what a warning for the United States where fundamental character traits are treated carelessly. There's an absolute need for intellectual integrity in Christian living. Without it, dishonesty creeps in under many guises. If Christians cut moral corners in one aspect of their lives, they undercut everything else they do. And their moral influence dissolves. As Colossians 3:23 says, do everything as unto the Lord. I want to close with this illustration. Integrity is more than not being deceitful or slipshod. It makes doing everything heartily as unto the Lord. In his books, Lyrics, Oscar Hammerstein II points out the reason why Christians, points out one reason why, a reason Christians have always known. A year or two ago, on the cover of the New York Herald Tribune, Sunday magazine, Hammerstein saw a picture of the Statue of Liberty taken from a helicopter. The picture showed the top of the statue's head. Hammerstein was amazed at the detail there. The sculptor had done a painstaking job of the lady's hairstyle, and yet he must have been pretty sure that the only eyes, that the eyes would ever see this. He would have been pretty sure that only the eyes would have been able to see the detail would be of those of the seagulls. He could not have dreamt that any man would ever fly over this head. He was an artist. Enough, however, to finish off this part of the statue with as much care as he had devoted to her face and arms and the torch and everything that people can see as they sail up the bay. Whenever you're creating a work of art or any other kind of work, finish the job off perfectly. You never know when a helicopter or some other instrument not at the moment invented may come along and find you out. So, we should be honest and accountable. And all the 12-step groups there, honesty and accountability is first and foremost. And be patient with the failings of others, because we Christians do fail. But thank God we can be forgiven.